Close your eyes now and let your breath become slow and deep. Breathing in peace, breathing out all the weight of the day, all the worries and thoughts that have filled your mind, letting them drift away like leaves on a gentle stream, carried off into the distance where they no longer matter, where they dissolve into the soft twilight that surrounds you now. Feel your body sinking deeper into comfort, every muscle releasing its tension, your shoulders dropping, your jaw relaxing, your hands becoming soft and open, your legs growing heavy and warm as if you were being cradled by the earth itself, held in perfect safety, in perfect stillness. Tonight, you will journey into an ancient story, a tale whispered across thousands of years, a memory of water and renewal, of divine wisdom and gentle transformation. A story that flows like a lullaby through the corridors of time, reaching you now as you prepare to drift into the deepest, most peaceful sleep. There is no urgency here, no rush, only the slow unfolding of wonder, only the soft rhythm of waves and breath, only the timeless dance of stars above tranquil waters. Let yourself float into this story. Let it carry you as the great waters once carried the ancient ark. Let it rock you gently into dreams, into rest, into the profound peace that comes when we surrender to the eternal cycles of renewal that move through all things. In the time before time was counted, in the days when the world was young and the sky touched the earth in ways now forgotten, there lived beings of great wisdom and power, beings who came from beyond the stars. From the deep heavens where light and consciousness were woven together in patterns of sublime beauty. These were the Anunnaki, the great ones who descended, the teachers and watchers, the keepers of mysteries, and they walked among the early humans with grace and purpose, sharing knowledge of the stars and seasons, of planting and harvest, of music and mathematics, building great cities that gleamed like jewels under the ancient sun, raising temples that reached toward the infinite sky. The Anunnaki moved with a radiance that was not quite light, but something softer, something that seemed to emanate from within their very being, a warmth and presence that brought comfort to all who stood near them. Their eyes held the depths of space and time, reflecting galaxies and nebulae, holding memories of worlds beyond counting. Yet when they looked upon the humans they had guided and nurtured, there was tenderness there, a care that transcended the vast gulf between mortal and immortal, between earth and heaven. For many long ages the world flourished under this gentle guidance, and humanity grew and learned and dreamed, building their own wonders, singing their own songs, creating beauty that delighted the hearts of the Anunnaki and rose like incense to the highest heavens. The fields were abundant with grain that swayed in golden waves under warm breezes, the orchards heavy with fruit that tasted of sunlight and summer rain, the rivers clear and full of fish that flashed silver in the shallows, and everywhere there was life, such abundance of life, birds filling the air with their calls, herds of gentle animals grazing on the endless plains, children laughing as they played in village squares while their elders wove stories beneath ancient trees. The world was a garden, a paradise of harmony, where the divine and the mortal danced together in a great spiral of creation and joy, and the sky seemed always to glow with a soft golden light, as if the very air was blessed. But slowly, so slowly that at first none noticed, a shadow began to grow in the hearts of some, a forgetting of the sacred balance, a turning away from the gentle wisdom that had guided humanity for so long. It was not a darkness of malice or evil, but rather a kind of sleep, a drifting into distraction and discord, a losing of the thread that connected each soul to the great web of being. People began to forget the rituals of gratitude, the songs of praise that kept the channels open between earth and heaven, the simple acts of kindness that wove community together like strong cloth. Quarrels arose over trivial matters, disputes over boundaries and possessions, a hardening of hearts where once there had been flexibility and compassion. The great cities that had been built with such care and vision began to show signs of neglect, their temples gathering dust, their gardens overrun with weeds, their fountains silent and dry. The music that had once filled every day, that had been as natural as breathing, grew quiet, and a kind of noise took its place, a clamour of competing voices, each shouting to be heard above the others, each forgetting to listen. The Anunnaki watched this slow transformation with growing concern, gathering in their high councils to discuss what might be done, how the balance might be restored, how humanity might be gently awakened from this dream of separation and distraction before the forgetting became complete. They spoke in voices like wind chimes, like distant bells, their words flowing over and around each other in harmonies that contained layers of meaning, and their deliberations stretched across many days and nights, for they did not act hastily, did not make decisions lightly, understanding that every choice sent ripples across the fabric of existence, affecting not only the present moment but countless futures branching out like streams from a great river. Some among them argued for immediate intervention, for a dramatic sign that would shock humanity back into remembrance, while others counselled patience, trusting that the cycle would turn on its own, that wisdom would eventually reassert itself as it always had before. But as the seasons passed and the forgetting deepened, as the disconnection spread like a slow tide across the lands, covering what had once been bright with a grey film of indifference, even the most patient among them began to feel that something more was needed, that the world had reached a tipping point, a moment of crisis that demanded a response. It was Enlil, the great lord of wind and sky, commander of the heavens whose voice carried the weight of cosmic law, who first spoke the words that would change everything. In the great assembly, surrounded by the shimmering forms of his fellow Anunnaki, he rose and his presence filled the chamber like a gathering storm, powerful and absolute, yet not without sorrow, for he loved the world and all its creatures, even as he saw clearly that something had gone profoundly wrong. He spoke of the sacred order, the divine pattern that underpinned all creation, the delicate balance that allowed life to flourish and evolve, and he spoke of how that balance had been disrupted, how the disconnection and forgetting threatened not only humanity but the entire web of life, the plants and animals, the very soil and water and air, all of which were linked in ways subtle and profound. His words painted a picture of a world slowly dying, not from any external catastrophe but from within, from the loss of coherence and harmony, from the severing of the threads that bound all beings together in mutual care and recognition. And he proposed what seemed at first an unthinkable solution, a great cleansing, a washing away of the old world so that a new one might emerge, purified and renewed, ready to begin again with fresh wisdom and clear vision. A profound silence filled the council chamber as his words settled like snow, soft and cold and final, and into that silence came the sound of many breaths drawn in shock and contemplation, for what Enlil proposed was no small thing, no minor adjustment to the course of events, but a fundamental transformation, a death and rebirth on a scale that staggered even these ancient minds. The chamber itself seemed to hold its breath, the very walls and pillars of light that defined the space appearing to waver and shimmer with the weight of the decision being contemplated. Some of the Anunnaki nodded slowly, seeing the logic and necessity of such a drastic measure, understanding that sometimes the only way to heal a deep sickness is to allow the fever to burn through, to let go of what cannot be saved so that new life might have room to grow. Others recoiled at the thought, their faces showing grief and resistance, for they too loved humanity, had walked beside them for so long, had seen such beauty and potential in these fragile, passionate, creative beings who lived and loved and died so quickly, burning bright like candles in the great night of eternity. And it was Enki, brother to Enlil, lord of the deep waters, keeper of hidden wisdom, master of life and magic, who rose to speak in opposition, his voice gentle but firm, flowing like an underground river, cool and persistent and rich with ancient knowledge. Enki's eyes held the colour of the deepest ocean, blue-green and full of mystery, and when he spoke his words carried the sound of waves on distant shores, of rain falling on still pools, of springs bubbling up from the heart of mountains. He did not deny that the world had fallen into disharmony, did not argue against the observations that Enlil had made, for he too had seen the forgetting, the drift, the slow decay of sacred connection. But he questioned whether destruction, even gentle destruction, even cleansing and renewal, was truly the only path forward, whether there might not be another way, a way that preserved what was beautiful and good while healing what was broken, a way that worked with humanity rather than starting over without them. He spoke of the potential that still existed in the human heart, the spark of divine light that lived in each soul, however dimmed it might have become, however buried under layers of distraction and confusion. He reminded the council of the laughter of children, the devotion of lovers, the courage of those who still held to the old ways despite the pressures around them, the quiet acts of kindness that continued even in these troubled times, like flowers growing through cracks in stone proving that life and goodness could not be completely suppressed, that hope remained. But Enlil stood unmoved, his conviction like a mountain, ancient and immovable, and he spoke again of cosmic law, of patterns that could not be bent beyond a certain point without breaking, of tides that must be allowed to flow even when they wash away what we cherish. For such is the nature of existence, such is the price of evolution and growth. The debate continued through the long night, voices rising and falling in the council chamber like music, like thunder, arguments flowing and circling and returning to their starting points, each side presenting their truth, their vision, their understanding of what love and wisdom required in this moment of crisis. The other Anunnaki listened and considered, adding their own voices to the great conversation, and slowly a consensus began to form, not a complete agreement but a collective recognition that something fundamental had to shift, that the current trajectory could not continue, that intervention was necessary even if the form of that intervention remained in question. Finally, as the first pale light of dawn began to glow on the horizon, touching the chamber with fingers of soft gold and rose, a decision was reached, a compromise that honoured both Enlil's vision of necessary cleansing and Enki's compassion for humanity. There would be a great flood, yes, a rising of waters that would cover the earth, washing away the accumulated weight of discord and forgetting, returning the world to a kind of primordial freshness, a blank canvas upon which a new story could be written. But it would not be total destruction, not a complete ending, for there would be survivors, chosen carefully from among those who still remembered the sacred ways, who still carried the light undimmed in their hearts, who could be trusted to carry forward the best of what humanity had learned and achieved, planting seeds of wisdom in the new world that would emerge when the waters receded. And the flood itself would not be violent or catastrophic, not a punishment inflicted in anger, but rather a gentle transformation, a cosmic reset accomplished with care and intention. The waters rising slowly and peacefully, giving time for preparation, for saying farewell, for gathering what needed to be saved, rising like a blessing rather than a curse, like a baptism that would wash the world clean and make all things new again. Enki left the council chamber with a heavy heart, but also with determination, for he had been given a task, a secret mission that he would carry out despite the objections of his brother and the strict command that no one should be warned of what was coming. But Enki was clever, wise in ways that went beyond rules and regulations, understanding that sometimes love requires disobedience, that sometimes the truest loyalty is to life itself rather than to edicts and decrees. He moved through the world in the days that followed, observing carefully, searching among the scattered settlements and villages for someone who embodied the qualities that would be needed in the new age, someone with integrity and wisdom, with practical skills and spiritual depth, someone who could be trusted with the enormous responsibility of preserving not only human life, but the lives of all creatures, the plants and animals that were innocent of any wrongdoing, that deserved to continue their existence even as the world was transformed around them. His search led him eventually to a man named Ziusudra, though in other places and times this man would be known by other names, Atrahasis, Utnapishtim, Noah, but the essence remained the same, a soul of rare quality, a person who had not forgotten the sacred, who still honoured the old ways, who lived in harmony with the land and the seasons and the unseen currents of divine presence that flowed through all things. Ziusudra was not wealthy or powerful in the ways the world usually measures such things, did not rule over great territories or command armies, or possess vast stores of gold and jewels. He was a farmer and a shepherd, a man who knew the language of plants and animals, who could read the weather and the colour of the sunset and the flight of birds, who treated the earth with respect and gratitude, taking only what was needed and always giving back in equal measure through offerings and prayers and careful stewardship. His hands were calloused and strong from years of work, his face weathered by sun and wind, marked with the lines that come from much laughter and occasional sorrow, and his eyes held a clarity and calmness that spoke of deep inner peace, of a soul that had found its centre and remained there regardless of external circumstances. He lived simply, in a modest dwelling made of reed and clay, surrounded by well-tended fields and healthy flocks, and those who knew him spoke of his fairness and kindness, his willingness to help neighbours in need, his patience with children and animals, his way of bringing calm to situations of conflict or confusion, simply by his presence, by the quiet wisdom that seemed to radiate from him like gentle light. Enki came to Ziusudra not in the full glory of his divine form, for such a manifestation would have been overwhelming, too bright and strange for mortal eyes to comfortably behold, but rather in a more subtle manner, appearing in dreams and visions. Speaking through the whisper of wind in the reeds that grew beside Ziusudra's dwelling, through the patterns of ripples on the surface of the irrigation canal that ran through his land, through the movements of clouds and the calls of birds, finding 1,000 ways to communicate the message that needed to be delivered without breaking the letter of the prohibition against direct warning. Night after night, Ziusudra would wake from dreams of water, vast expanses of water stretching to every horizon, deep blue-green water that rose and rose, covering fields and villages, reaching up to touch the sky, but water that was somehow not frightening, water that felt purposeful and clean, that seemed to wash away shadows and leave everything gleaming and new in its wake. And in these dreams, a voice would speak. Not in words exactly, but in feelings and knowings that settled into Ziusudra's consciousness like seeds planted in fertile soil, telling him that change was coming, great change, transformation on a scale beyond imagining, and that he had been chosen for a sacred task, a work of preservation and hope. At first, Ziusudra tried to dismiss these dreams as products of too much rich food before bed, or as random firings of a tired mind, but they continued night after night with growing clarity and intensity, and eventually he could no longer ignore them, could no longer pretend they were merely dreams. He began to pay closer attention to the world around him, noticing subtle changes that others overlooked, the way the animals seemed restless and agitated, the unusual patterns of cloud formation, the strange quality of the light at dawn and dusk, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something immense to unfold. And the voice in his dreams became more specific, more insistent, giving him instructions that seemed impossible, absurd even, yet that carried such authority, such conviction, that he found himself unable to refuse, found himself beginning to make preparations for something he did not fully understand, but that he trusted with a faith deeper than reason, deeper than doubt. The instructions were clear, repeated many times until Ziusudra could recite them from memory, could see them written in light behind his closed eyes. He was to build a great vessel, an ark unlike any boat that had ever been constructed, not designed for sailing rivers or crossing lakes, but for floating upon waters that would cover the entire world, waters that would rise higher than the tallest mountains, that would transform the earth into a single vast ocean under an infinite sky. The dimensions were specified precisely, measurements given in cubits that he had to convert into terms he understood, using his own arm and hand as guides, and the materials were listed, the types of wood that would be needed, the resins and pitch that would seal the seams and make the whole thing watertight, the internal divisions and chambers that would be required to house not only his own family, but representatives of every kind of creature that walked or crawled or flew, a complete catalogue of life that would need to be gathered and brought aboard before the waters came. The task seemed overwhelming, impossible for one man to accomplish, but the voice assured him that he would not be alone, that helpers would come, that the work would flow more easily than he imagined if he simply began, if he took the first step in faith and trust. And so Ziusudra began, rising each day before dawn to work on the great ark, choosing trees from the forest that grew on the hills above his land, trees that whispered their consent to be used for this sacred purpose, that seemed to offer themselves willingly for transformation from living wood to protective vessel. He cut them carefully with prayers and gratitude, apologizing to each tree for the necessity of its death, explaining the reason, asking its spirit to remain with the wood and lend its strength and blessing to the ark that would preserve life through the coming transformation. He hauled the logs down the hillside with the help of his oxen, patient beasts who seemed to understand the importance of the work, who pulled steadily without complaint even when the load was heavy and the way was steep. He shaped the wood with adze and saw, his hands moving with the skill born of long practice, finding the grain and working with it rather than against it, coaxing each plank into its proper form, fitting pieces together with a precision that seemed guided by more than mortal craft, as if his hands were being directed by an invisible intelligence, by the wisdom of Enki flowing through him. The ark grew slowly, day by day, week by week, rising from the ground like a great rectangular mountain, its sides smooth and high, its interior divided into 3 levels, each with many rooms and compartments, storage areas for food and water, spaces for animals large and small, quarters for his family that would be their home for however long the waters lasted. The people of the nearby village came to watch and to question, asking what he was doing, why he was building such a strange structure so far from any body of water large enough to float it, and Ziusudra answered them gently, explaining as best he could about the dreams and visions, about the voice that had instructed him, about the flood that was coming. Most laughed and shook their heads, thinking him mad, touched by the sun or by some fever of the brain, for the sky was clear and blue, the rivers flowing at normal levels, and there was no sign whatsoever of any coming deluge. But a few listened with more attention, seeing something in Ziusudra's eyes that made them hesitate, made them wonder if perhaps there was truth in his wild-sounding claims, and these few offered to help, lending their hands to the work, speeding the construction, bringing their own skills and strength to the great project. Months passed, seasons turned, and the ark neared completion, its massive form now dominating the landscape, visible from miles away, a monument to faith and obedience, to the power of heeding inner guidance even when it defies logic and reason. Ziusudra coated the outside with pitch, thick black resin that he melted and brushed on carefully, layer after layer, until the entire surface was sealed, impermeable to water, gleaming darkly in the sun like the carapace of some enormous beetle. He built a roof over the whole structure, pitched to shed rain, with a window running along the top just below the roofline to admit air and light, and a great door in the side so large that it seemed made for giants, that opened on massive hinges and could be sealed tight when needed. He filled the storage rooms with provisions, gathering grain and dried fruits, nuts and honey, oil and wine, everything that would be needed to sustain life for a long journey across an uncertain sea, not knowing how long the waters would remain, how many days or weeks or months would pass before dry land appeared again. And he gathered supplies for the animals as well, bales of hay and straw, dried grasses and seeds, containers of fresh water, everything necessary to keep them healthy and alive, for they were precious cargo, irreplaceable, the future of their kind depending on their survival. The voice in Ziusudra's dreams had told him that the animals would come to him when the time was right, that he would not need to hunt them down or trap them, that they would arrive of their own accord, drawn by some instinct deeper than conscious thought, some knowing that flowed through the web of life, alerting them to danger and guiding them to safety. And indeed, as the completion of the ark drew near, animals began to appear, emerging from forests and fields, from mountains and marshes, making their way to where the great vessel stood waiting. They came in pairs, male and female, 2 by 2, as if organised by some unseen coordinator, some divine choreographer who had arranged the entire gathering with perfect precision. Birds flew in and perched on the roof of the ark, waiting patiently, their bright eyes alert and calm. Deer and gazelles, sheep and goats, cattle and horses, all the domestic animals and the wild ones too, creatures that normally feared humans approaching without terror, allowing themselves to be gently guided aboard, finding their way to the spaces prepared for them, as if they had known all along where to go. Even the great beasts came, the lions and bears, the wolves and leopards, predators that normally struck fear into the hearts of humans and prey animals alike. But now they moved peacefully, their hunting instincts somehow suspended, their fierce natures gentled by the same mysterious force that had brought them to this place. They walked up the ramp into the ark with dignity and grace, their powerful bodies relaxed, and they settled into their assigned spaces without conflict or aggression, lying down on beds of straw like tame house cats, their eyes half closed in contentment, as if they understood that the normal rules of existence had been temporarily set aside, that this was a time out of time, a sacred interval in which all creatures were family, all life equally precious and deserving of protection. The small animals came too, the mice and rabbits, the foxes and badgers, creatures that burrowed and climbed and scurried, and even the insects, though these needed no special accommodation, simply flying in through the window or crawling through tiny gaps in the wood, ants and beetles and butterflies, bees and dragonflies, all the minute forms of life that were just as essential to the web of existence as the larger, more dramatic creatures. Ziusudra watched this gathering with wonder and awe, his heart swelling with emotion at the sight of so much life, so much beauty and diversity, all trusting him to keep them safe, to guide them through the coming transformation. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him, but also a strange lightness, a joy that came from being part of something so much larger than himself, from serving a purpose that transcended personal concerns and connected him to the deepest patterns of existence. His wife stood beside him, her hand in his, and she too watched with tears streaming down her face, tears of wonder and gratitude, of love for these creatures and for the mysterious divine intelligence that had orchestrated this entire event. Their children worked alongside them, helping to settle the animals, distributing food and water, speaking softly to calm those who seemed anxious or confused, and the whole family moved in a kind of harmony, a choreography of care and attention, each knowing what needed to be done and doing it without fuss or complaint. When the last animal had been brought aboard, when every space was filled and every creature accounted for, Ziusudra and his family entered the ark themselves, climbing the ramp with slow, reverent steps, pausing at the threshold to look back at the world they were leaving behind, the familiar landscape of fields and hills, the village in the distance with its small houses and smoking cooking fires, the trees and streams and paths they had known all their lives. There was sorrow in that last look, a farewell to a way of life that would never return exactly as it had been, but there was also anticipation, a sense of standing on the edge of something new and unknown, of being part of a great adventure, a cosmic story that would echo through all the ages to come. And then they stepped inside, crossing from the known into the mysterious, and the great door swung shut behind them with a deep, resonant boom that seemed to echo across the landscape, a sound of finality and beginning, of ending and commencing all at once. Inside the ark, the light was dim and golden, filtering through the window that ran along the top, and the air smelled of wood and pitch, of hay and animal warmth, of the sea that was to come, though it had not yet arrived. The family moved through the spaces they had prepared, checking on the animals, making small adjustments to bedding and water containers, familiarizing themselves with their new home, this floating sanctuary that would be their entire world for however long the transformation lasted. There was a strange quality to the atmosphere inside the ark, a sense of being outside of normal time and space, as if they had stepped into a pocket dimension, a protected bubble that existed parallel to the regular world but separate from it, governed by different rules, different rhythms. The sounds from outside became muted and distant, and even the light seemed to change, becoming softer, more diffuse, more like the light of dreams than the harsh clarity of everyday reality. And then, gently, so gently that at first it was barely noticeable, the rain began to fall, not a violent downpour, not the kind of storm that tears at trees and batters roofs, but a soft, steady rain, gentle as tears, as if the sky itself was weeping for what had been and what would be, releasing its sorrow and its blessing together in these silver drops that fell without ceasing, hour after hour, day after day. The sound of the rain on the roof of the ark was like music, like a lullaby sung by the cosmos itself, a rhythmic pattering that varied in intensity but never completely stopped, creating a blanket of white noise that soothed the mind and invited deep relaxation, deep release of tension and worry. Inside the ark, the family and the animals settled into a new routine, a new way of being, and they found themselves slowing down, moving more deliberately, speaking less, and listening more, attuning themselves to the subtle vibrations of this sacred vessel that was carrying them through the greatest transformation the world had ever known. The waters rose as the voice had promised, as Enki had foreseen, fed not only by the gentle rain that fell from above but also by springs and fountains bursting from below, from the deep places of the earth, as if the planet itself was releasing moisture it had held for ages, contributing its own waters to the great cleansing. The rivers overflowed their banks, spreading across the fields, the low-lying areas filling first, becoming lakes and then seas, the water level creeping higher and higher up the hillsides, covering villages and roads, reaching toward the ark that sat waiting on higher ground. But there was no violence in this rising, no crashing waves or destructive currents. Just a steady, inexorable increase, like a bathtub filling slowly, the water calm and clear, reflecting the clouded sky above, becoming a vast mirror in which the heavens could see themselves, could contemplate their own beauty and mystery. And when the water finally reached the ark, it lifted the great vessel as gently as a mother lifting a sleeping child, buoying it up without jolting or shaking, allowing it to float free from the ground that had supported it during its construction. And now it was truly a boat, truly a ship, beginning its voyage across an ocean that covered the entire world. Inside the ark, Ziusudra felt the moment when the vessel broke free from land, felt the subtle shift in balance, the new sensation of floating, of being held not by solid earth but by water, supported by the very element that was transforming everything. It was not frightening, but rather strangely comforting, like being rocked in a cradle, like returning to the womb, that first environment that all life remembers on some deep cellular level, that state of suspended animation in warm, protective fluid, safe from all harm, nurtured and sustained without effort. The ark swayed gently with the movement of the water, a slow, rhythmic motion that seemed to penetrate every board and beam, every body and breath, creating a harmony between vessel and ocean, between cargo and carrier, until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began, until everything became part of one great flowing unity, one gentle dance of water and wood and life. The days blended together in a kind of timeless present, one flowing into the next without clear boundaries, marked only by the alternation of dim daytime light filtering through the window and dimmer nighttime darkness illuminated by oil lamps that burned with soft golden flames. The family developed rhythms for feeding the animals, for cleaning their spaces, for preparing their own meals and gathering together for conversation and rest. But these activities felt less like work and more like meditation, like sacred rituals performed not out of obligation but out of love, out of connection to the precious cargo of life they had been entrusted to protect. The animals, too, settled into a deep calm, eating and sleeping and occasionally making the soft sounds of their kind, but without the restlessness or aggression that might have been expected from such confinement, as if they too understood that this was a special time, a holy time, a time to rest and wait and trust in the great forces that were reshaping the world around them. At night, Ziusudra would climb up to the window and look out across the waters, seeing nothing but ocean in every direction. Water meeting sky at a distant horizon that seemed infinitely far away, and above, the stars would appear when the clouds parted, those eternal points of light that had guided travellers and inspired poets since the beginning of time, unchanged by the transformation happening below, still wheeling through their ancient patterns, still singing their silent songs of cosmic order and beauty. And sometimes, on clear nights, Ziusudra would see lights moving above the water, not stars but something else, luminous forms that danced and glided, and he knew these were the Anunnaki, the great ones who watched over the ark and its precious cargo, who guided it through currents and kept it safe from any danger, who had orchestrated this entire event and now attended it with care and attention, making sure that nothing was lost that deserved to be saved, that the seeds of the new world were protected until the time came for them to be planted in fresh soil. The rain continued for 40 days and 40 nights, though inside the ark time had become so fluid that counting days seemed arbitrary, seemed like a human habit that no longer quite applied in this state of suspension between worlds, between ages. But eventually, so gradually that it was hard to pinpoint the exact moment, the rain began to lessen, the steady drumming on the roof becoming intermittent, occasional, and then finally stopping altogether, leaving behind a silence that was almost startling in its completeness, a silence broken only by the gentle lapping of the waves against the hull of the ark and the soft sounds of the animals and the family breathing together in the dimness. The sky began to clear, clouds thinning and separating, allowing sunlight through in shafts and beams that painted the water with gold and silver, that made the surface of the ocean sparkle and dance with reflected glory, and the air that came in through the window smelled different now, cleaner somehow, fresher, as if it had been washed and purified along with everything else. But the waters did not recede quickly, did not drain away in a dramatic rush, for that would have been violent and destructive in its own way, would have scoured the earth bare and left it scarred and damaged. Instead, the waters lowered as gently as they had risen, millimetre by millimetre, day by day, slowly revealing the transformed landscape beneath, the world that had been cleansed and renewed, that lay waiting to receive life once more. The ark drifted peacefully on this gradually lowering sea, floating above submerged mountains and valleys, above forests that stood silent underwater like groves of sea plants, above cities that had been abandoned and now lay quiet and clean in the depths, their stones and streets washed free of all the accumulated debris of ages, ready to be covered by new soil, new growth, ready to become part of the foundation for what would come next. Weeks passed, and then one morning, Ziusudra, looking out from the window, saw in the distance the first glimpse of land, a mountain peak breaking the surface of the water like an island, dark and barren but solid, real, a piece of earth reclaiming its place in the world. His heart leaped at the sight, and he called his family to come and see, and they all crowded at the window, gazing at that distant point of land with longing and joy, with hope that the long waiting was nearing its end, that soon they would be able to leave the ark and step once more on solid ground, to begin the work of replanting and rebuilding, of creating the new world that this great cleansing had made possible. But the ark did not head directly for that peak, did not rush toward landfall, instead continuing its slow drift guided by currents that the Anunnaki controlled, directed toward a specific destination that had been chosen with care, a place where the geography and climate would be ideal for beginning again, where fresh water and fertile soil, gentle slopes and protective mountains would provide everything needed for life to flourish once more. More peaks appeared as the days passed, the water level dropping steadily, revealing more and more of the transformed earth, and the world that emerged was not the same as the one that had been submerged. The waters had rearranged things, had smoothed rough places and filled in others, had redistributed soil and stone, creating new patterns, new landscapes that were similar to what had been before but also subtly different, renewed, refreshed, like a face after a long sleep and a cleansing wash. The air was pristine, free of all pollution and heaviness, and when the wind blew through the window of the ark it carried scents of minerals and rain, of clean water and new beginnings, and these scents stirred something deep in the souls of all who breathed them, a recognition of sacred potential, of fresh possibility, of chance to start again with wisdom, learned from what had come before. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity but was also somehow no time at all, the ark came to rest, settling gently onto the peak of a mountain that rose from the receding waters, nestling into the landscape as if it had been made to fit exactly in this spot, as if this had been its destination all along, the place where the cargo of preserved life would be released to repopulate the earth. The landing was so gentle that at first the family did not even realize it had happened, continuing with their daily routines until Ziusudra felt the stillness, the cessation of the gentle rocking motion that had become so familiar, so constant, that its absence was shocking. He went to the window and looked out and saw that they were no longer floating but resting, grounded, arrived, and the waters were visibly lower now, revealing slopes and valleys, exposing the bones of the earth that would soon be clothed again in green growing things, in forests and meadows, in all the beauty that life brings to barren stone and soil. But still they waited, for Ziusudra knew that patience was required, that rushing would be a mistake, that the earth needed time to dry, to stabilize, to repair itself to receive the life that would soon be released upon it. He sent out birds, first a raven that flew away and did not return, finding food and rest in the changed world, and then a dove, which returned because there was nowhere yet to land, no tree to perch in, no green thing to mark as home. 7 days later he sent the dove out again, and this time it returned with an olive leaf in its beak, a small green leaf freshly plucked, proof that plants were growing again, that the earth was ready to support life, that the time of waiting was nearly over. The family rejoiced at this sign, passing the olive leaf from hand to hand, marvelling at its delicate beauty, at the hope it represented, and they began to make preparations for leaving the ark, gathering their belongings, preparing the animals for departure, their hearts filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, eager to begin again, but also strangely reluctant to leave the safety and peace of their floating sanctuary. And then, on a morning when the sun rose clear and bright in a sky of perfect blue, when the air was warm and still and full of promise, Enki appeared to Ziusudra, not in dreams this time, but in waking reality, manifesting in his full glory, radiant and beautiful beyond description, his form shimmering with colours that had no names, his presence filling the space with a warmth and love that brought tears to Ziusudra's eyes. And Enki spoke, his voice like water and music, like wind and bells, saying that the time had come, that the earth was renewed and ready, that the great cleansing was complete, and now the work of repopulation and rebuilding could begin. He thanked Ziusudra for his faith and obedience, for his willingness to undertake such a difficult task based on nothing but trust, for his care of all the creatures that had been placed in his keeping, and he promised that Ziusudra and his descendants would be blessed, would be given long life and prosperity, would be honoured throughout all generations for the role they had played in preserving life through the great transformation. And then Enki did something extraordinary, something that filled Ziusudra with wonder, and sealed the promise of renewal in a way that could never be forgotten. He reached up toward the sky, and as he did, the sunlight that had been pouring down caught the moisture still suspended in the air, the invisible water vapour left over from all the rain, and suddenly there appeared across the heavens a bow of colour, a magnificent arc that stretched from one horizon to the other, bands of red and orange and yellow and green and blue and violet glowing with impossible brightness, with a beauty so pure and intense that it seemed like a message written in light, a covenant between earth and heaven, between the divine and the mortal, between the past that had been washed away and the future that now lay open and full of potential. This rainbow, Enki explained, would be a sign and a reminder, appearing whenever rain fell and sun shone together, a promise that never again would such a complete cleansing be necessary, that the world would be allowed to unfold and develop, to make mistakes and learn from them, to grow in its own time and its own way, guided but not controlled, loved but not constrained, free to become whatever it was meant to become through the infinite creativity of life itself. Ziusudra stood gazing at the rainbow, with his family beside him, all of them transfixed by its beauty, by the sense of blessing and promise that radiated from it, and they felt in that moment a peace deeper than any they had ever known, a certainty that they were held in a love beyond measure, that their lives had meaning and purpose, that the suffering and uncertainty of the flood time had been worth it, had been necessary to bring about this moment of perfect beauty and perfect hope. And the rainbow remained visible for a long time, much longer than rainbows usually last, arcing over the arc and the mountain and the waters below, over the whole world that was beginning again, and its colours seemed to pulse and breathe as if alive, as if the rainbow itself was a living thing, a bridge between worlds, a connection between the material and the spiritual, between time and eternity. When the rainbow finally faded, dissolving back into the air and light from which it had been formed, Ziusudra opened the great door of the ark, the door that had been sealed for so many days and nights, and light poured in, brilliant and warm, carrying with it the scents of the renewed earth, of wet stone and fresh water, of soil ready for seeds, and of something else, something indefinable, something that could only be called newness, the smell of a world at the beginning of its story, full of potential and promise. He lowered the ramp, and one by one, pair by pair, the animals emerged, blinking in the bright sunlight, stretching limbs that had been confined, breathing deeply of the clean air, and then, as if released from a spell, they scattered, running and flying and galloping off in all directions, spreading out across the mountain and the valleys below, finding their places, establishing their territories, beginning the work of multiplying and filling the earth once more with the beautiful diversity of life. The family watched them go with joy and sadness mixed together, having grown attached to these creatures during the long days of confinement, having learned their individual personalities and quirks, but knowing too that this was right, that this was the whole purpose of everything they had done, this moment of release and new beginning. And when the last animal had departed, when the ark stood empty except for the family themselves, they too descended the ramp, their feet touching solid earth for the first time in months, and the sensation was strange and wonderful, the firmness of the ground almost shocking after so long floating, and they stood there for a moment, adjusting, reorienting, feeling the earth steady and strong beneath them, feeling themselves part of it again, rooted and connected, no longer adrift but anchored. Home. The first thing Ziusudra did was build an altar, gathering stones that lay scattered on the mountainside. stones that had been washed clean by the waters, stones that seemed to glow with an inner light, and he stacked them carefully, creating a sacred space, a place of offering and gratitude, a way to acknowledge the divine forces that had protected and guided them through the great transformation. He lit a fire on the altar, and the smoke rose straight up into the still air, a column of white reaching toward the sky, carrying with it the family's prayers and thanks, their relief and joy, their commitment to live in ways that honoured the gift they had been given, the chance to begin again, to create a world more aligned with sacred principles, more conscious of the interconnection of all life, more devoted to beauty and harmony and love. And the smoke was pleasing to the Anunnaki, who watched from their high places, who saw in it the sincerity and devotion of these humans who had been saved. And they gathered in council once more to discuss the future, to make plans for how they would guide humanity in this new age, how they would share wisdom without imposing control, how they would remain present but increasingly invisible, allowing humans to develop their own cultures and technologies, their own understanding of the divine, stepping back gradually so that humanity could mature into its full potential, could become in time partners rather than children, co-creators rather than dependents. And Enlil too was satisfied, seeing that the cleansing had accomplished what was needed, that the slate was clean, that the possibility for real growth and evolution now existed in ways it had not before. And he made peace with Enki, acknowledging that his brother's compassion had been wise, that the preservation of worthy souls had been the right choice, and the two great beings, different in temperament but united in love for creation, worked together now to guide the unfolding of the new world. In the days and weeks that followed, Ziusudra and his family explored their new home, walking across the mountainside and down into the valleys, discovering streams of crystal clear water, finding pockets of rich soil where plants had already begun to grow, noticing everywhere signs of life returning, regenerating, flourishing in the clean, fresh environment. They found seeds that had survived the flood, either carried in the ark or washed up by the waters from distant places, and they planted these carefully, creating the first gardens of the new world. Gardens that would provide food and medicine, gardens that would be the ancestors of all the cultivated plants that would eventually spread across the earth. They built a dwelling, simple at first but gradually becoming more elaborate, a home where they could gather and rest, where they could tell stories and sing songs, where they could remember the old world and dream about the new one they were helping to create. Animals returned, drawn by the presence of humans who were kind and respectful, who did not hunt aggressively or take more than they needed, and a kind of peace existed between human and animal that would later be remembered as the Golden Age, the time when all creatures lived in harmony, when the lion lay down with the lamb, when fear and predation were gentled, held in abeyance by the lingering magic of the renewal, by the blessing that permeated everything in those early days of the new world. The family had children, new lives born into this fresh reality who had never known the old world, who grew up in an environment of beauty and abundance, who were taught from their earliest days about the flood and its meaning, about the covenant represented by the rainbow, about their responsibility to live in balance with the earth and all its creatures, to honour the divine forces that had preserved life through the great cleansing. Seasons passed, years accumulated, and gradually other survivors appeared, people who had found their own ways to endure the flood, perhaps warned by other Anunnaki, perhaps simply lucky in their location or their resources, and these scattered groups began to find each other, to come together, to share stories and skills, to build the foundations of new communities and eventually new civilizations. But they were different from the people of the old world, more conscious, more careful, more aware of the sacred dimension of existence, and they carried in their hearts and minds the memory of the great cleansing, passing it down through oral traditions and later written texts, enshrining it in myth and legend, in religious teaching and cultural practice, making sure that no generation would forget what had happened, what had been lost and what had been saved, what had been learned through that long time of floating between worlds, between ages, between the past and the future. And the Anunnaki, true to their word, gradually withdrew from direct involvement in human affairs, becoming more myth than reality, more symbol than physical presence, but leaving behind knowledge and wisdom, teaching and inspiration that would echo through all the centuries to come, that would surface again and again in different forms and cultures, that would guide humanity even when the source of that guidance was forgotten or transformed beyond recognition. They left signs and wonders, monuments and mysteries, patterns encoded in architecture and astronomy, in mathematics and music, in the deep structure of language and symbol, and those who had eyes to see could still perceive their influence, could still feel their presence in moments of profound beauty or insight, in experiences of transcendence and connection, in the rainbow that appeared after every rain, arcing across the sky as a reminder of love and promise, of cleansing and renewal, of the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that moves through all things. The story of the flood became one of the central narratives of human culture, appearing in countless versions across different lands and languages, each telling emphasizing different aspects, different lessons, but all agreeing on the essentials, on the fact that there had been a time of great transformation, a cleansing by water, a destruction that was also a creation, an ending that was also a beginning. And this story spoke to something deep in the human soul, some archetypal pattern that resonated across time and space, some memory not just of a historical event but of a spiritual truth, the truth that renewal is always possible, that no matter how far we stray from harmony and balance, no matter how lost we become in distraction and discord, there is always the possibility of return, of cleansing, of starting fresh, of being washed clean and beginning again with new wisdom and new commitment. The waters that covered the earth during the flood became a symbol of the unconscious, of the vast deep realm of mind and soul that lies beneath the surface of everyday awareness, the realm from which new life and new consciousness emerge, the womb of transformation where old forms dissolve and new ones are born. To be immersed in these waters, to float upon them as Ziusudra and his family did, was to surrender to forces larger than the ego, larger than individual will, to trust in the great patterns of existence, to allow oneself to be carried by currents that flow from the source of all being, and to emerge from such an experience was to be reborn, to see the world with fresh eyes, to understand in a new way the preciousness and interconnection of all life. The ark itself became a symbol of the self, of the interior space that must be constructed with care and intention, the protected place where the seeds of our best qualities can be preserved through times of chaos and transformation, where the animals of our instinct and emotion can be housed and tended rather than repressed or destroyed, where we can ride out the storms of existence without losing what is essential, without being swept away by the overwhelming forces that sometimes threaten to dissolve everything we are and know. To build the ark is to do the inner work, to create structure and shelter for the soul, to prepare for the inevitable changes and challenges that life brings, to trust that if we do this work with sincerity and devotion, we will not only survive but emerge transformed, renewed, ready to inhabit a new world with new eyes and new hearts. And the rainbow, most beautiful of all the symbols connected with the flood story, became the ultimate sign of hope and promise, the visible manifestation of divine love and commitment. The bridge between heaven and earth, between the spiritual and material, between sorrow and joy. Every time it appears, arcing across the sky after rain, it speaks to those who see it of renewal and possibility, of the beauty that can emerge from difficulty, of the light that shines through darkness, of the covenant that binds all life together in a web of meaning and purpose. The rainbow reminds us that we are not alone, that we are seen and known and loved by forces greater than we can imagine, that the universe itself conspires toward beauty and harmony, toward the evolution of consciousness and the deepening of love. As you lie here now, drifting towards sleep, floating on your own sea of consciousness, letting the story of the flood wash over you and through you, feel yourself releasing all that needs to be released, all the accumulated debris of worry and stress, all the patterns and habits that no longer serve, all the heaviness that weighs you down. Let it all dissolve in the gentle waters of this cleansing narrative. Let it be carried away by the current of these words, by the flow of this ancient tale. Feel yourself becoming lighter, more buoyant, more free, as if you too are beginning to float, as if you too are being lifted by waters of transformation, held safe in your own ark of consciousness, protected and preserved, carried toward a new shore, a new beginning, a fresh start. Imagine yourself in the ark with Ziusudra and his family, surrounded by the peaceful animals, hearing the gentle rain on the roof, feeling the soft rocking motion as the vessel floats upon infinite waters, and let this image fill your mind, replacing all other thoughts, becoming your whole reality for this moment, for this precious time of transition between waking and sleeping, between one day and the next, between who you were and who you are becoming. The ark is warm and safe, dimly lit by golden lamplight, the air smelling of wood and hay, of animal warmth and human presence, and everywhere there is a sense of peace, of purpose, of meaningful waiting, of trust that all is unfolding exactly as it should. The waters outside are calm and deep, stretching to every horizon, dark blue-green in the fading light, reflecting the first stars as they appear in the clearing sky, and the surface moves gently, rises and falls with slow-breathing rhythm, with the heartbeat of the earth itself, and you are part of this, floating on this, held by this, rocked by this, safe in the embrace of the great waters that cleanse and renew, that wash away the old and make space for the new, that carry you gently, so gently toward rest, toward renewal, toward the peace that surpasses all understanding. Let your breath slow and deepen, matching the rhythm of the waves, breathing in peace and breathing out tension, breathing in trust and breathing out worry, breathing in the clean, fresh air of new beginnings, and breathing out the stale air of old endings, and with each breath feel yourself sinking deeper into relaxation, deeper into peace, deeper into the blessed state of letting go, of surrender, of giving yourself over to the natural processes of rest and restoration that move through your body and mind, healing and renewing, cleansing and refreshing, preparing you for a new day, a new beginning, a fresh start. The rain has stopped now, and through the window of the ark you can see the moon rising, full and luminous, casting silver light across the water, creating a path of brightness that seems to lead from the ark all the way to the moon itself, a shimmering road of light that invites you to travel, to journey inward and upward, to rise on wings of dreams into the infinite sky where all is possible, where all is renewed, where the soul can soar free from the constraints of the body, free from the limits of time and space, free to explore the vast realms of consciousness that open when we release our grip on waking reality and allow ourselves to drift into sleep. The moon's reflection on the water is perfect and clear, a second moon beneath the ark, and between the moon above and the moon below the ark floats, suspended between worlds, between sky and sea, between waking and sleeping, between the conscious and unconscious, and you float here too, held in perfect balance, rocked by gentle waves, caressed by soft breezes, breathing in rhythm with the cosmos, your heartbeat aligned with the pulse of existence, your mind becoming quiet and still, empty of thought, full of peace, a clear pool reflecting the stars, a silent space in which the divine can speak, can whisper secrets of renewal and hope, of love and transformation. And from somewhere in the distance comes music, so soft and subtle that you almost wonder if you're imagining it, a sound like wind chimes or distant bells, like water flowing over stones or birds singing at dawn, a melody without beginning or end, without separation between notes, one continuous flow of beauty that rises and falls, that swells and fades, that weaves through the air like mist, like dreams, like the breath of the universe itself. And this music speaks directly to your soul, bypassing words and thoughts, communicating on a level deeper than language, older than speech, and what it says is simply this: you are loved, you are safe, you are held, you are part of the great pattern, the infinite web of being, connected to everything that lives and breathes and dreams, and nothing can separate you from this, nothing can break this bond, nothing can diminish the love that flows through you, and around you, and within you, always, eternally, without condition or limit. The animals in the ark are all sleeping now, curled in their nests of straw, breathing softly, dreaming whatever dreams animals dream, peaceful and content, trusting completely in the care of those who watch over them, and you can feel their peaceful presence all around you, their simple wisdom, their acceptance of what is, their ability to rest deeply and completely, to surrender to sleep without resistance or worry, and you let their peace become your peace. You let their trust become your trust. You let their surrender become your surrender, and like them you curl into your nest of comfort. You close your eyes. You let go of the day and all its demands. You drift into the healing darkness of sleep. Ziusudra walks through the ark in the deepest hours of night, checking on the animals one last time before he too sleeps, and his footsteps are soft and slow, his presence calm and reassuring, and as he passes each enclosure he sends a blessing, a wordless wish for peace and protection, for sweet dreams and deep rest, and these blessings ripple outward, touching not only the animals but the ark itself, the very wood and pitch and rope that holds everything together, and beyond the ark the blessings touch the waters, and beyond the waters the earth that lies sleeping beneath them, waiting to emerge renewed, and beyond the earth the blessings rise up to touch the sky, the stars, the moon, the infinite cosmos that dreams the dream of existence. And you receive these blessings too. You feel them washing over you like gentle rain, like healing light, like the softest touch of love. The night deepens, becomes more profound, more complete, and in this darkness there is no fear, only rest, only peace, only the deep comfort of being held in something larger than yourself, something ancient and wise and infinitely patient. Something that has been here since the beginning and will be here until the end and beyond the end. Something that knows you completely and loves you unconditionally. Something that whispers now in the language of silence, in the vocabulary of peace, in the grammar of grace, telling you that all is well, that you can rest, that you can let go, that you can trust the great current to carry you safely through the night and deliver you to morning renewed and refreshed, washed clean of all that burdened you, ready to begin again with hope and joy. The waters continue their gentle motion, rocking the ark in a rhythm slower than heartbeat, deeper than breath, a primordial rhythm that goes back to the origin of oceans, to the first waters that covered the earth when it was young and formless, to the cosmic sea from which all life emerged and to which all life returns, again and again, in the eternal cycle of birth and death and rebirth. And you are part of this cycle. You have always been part of this cycle, moving through it with grace and beauty, sometimes forgetting but always returning, always finding your way back to the source, always being renewed and refreshed, always beginning again. And somewhere far above, beyond the roof of the ark, beyond the clearing sky, beyond the moon and stars, the Anunnaki watch with eyes full of love and light, and they send down their blessings too, rays of intention and care that pass through all barriers, that reach into the deepest places, that touch the sleeping forms in the ark and the sleeping earth beneath the waters, and you as you sleep here now in your own safe place, in your own time, connected across all the centuries to that ancient moment of renewal, participating in that eternal story that never ends but only transforms, only continues, only flows forward, carrying all life with it toward destinations unknown, but always, always toward greater consciousness, greater love, greater unity with the source from which we come and to which we return. The story of the flood is your story too, the story of your own renewal, your own cleansing, your own transformation from old to new, from tired to refreshed, from burdened to free. And every night when you sleep you reenact this story. You enter your own ark of consciousness, you float on your own waters of dreams, you surrender to forces that dissolve the rigid structures of ego and identity, that wash away the accumulated tensions and toxins of daily life, that prepare you to wake renewed, to emerge from sleep as from the ark, stepping onto solid ground again but changed, different, carrying forward the best of what you were while leaving behind what no longer serves, beginning each day as a new world, fresh and full of possibility. The waters are receding now in your inner landscape, slowly revealing new shores, new mountains, new valleys waiting to be explored, and tomorrow when you wake you will discover what has emerged, what new possibilities have been revealed by the cleansing that happens in sleep, what new aspects of yourself have been uncovered, what new paths have opened. But for now you simply rest, you simply float, you simply allow the process to unfold without interference or analysis, trusting that the waters know what they are doing, that the divine intelligence that guides the flood also guides your sleep, your dreams, your renewal, and all you need to do is surrender, let go, release, rest. The rain has long since stopped, but its blessing remains, the gift of cleansing, of renewal, of fresh start, and the rainbow will come tomorrow. You will see it when you wake, arsing across the sky of your consciousness, bridging the night you are now entering and the morning that awaits, reminding you of the promise, the covenant, the eternal commitment to your growth and evolution, to your well-being and flourishing, to your journey through this life and beyond. And this promise is written not just in the sky, but in your very cells, in the deep structure of your being, in the DNA that carries memory across generations, in the soul that persists beyond death, in the consciousness that is eternal and cannot be destroyed. Sleep now, deep and peaceful sleep, floating on the waters of renewal, rocked in the ark of consciousness, held in the embrace of divine love, and let all these images and stories and blessings sink deep into your unconscious mind, into the fertile soil of your soul, where they will take root and grow, where they will blossom into dreams and insights, into healing and transformation, into whatever your unique being needs in this moment for its continued evolution and unfoldment. You are the ark and the waters, you are Ziusudra and the animals, you are the flood and the rainbow, you are the destruction and the renewal, you are all of it. The whole story lives in you, the whole cycle moves through you. And by surrendering to sleep, you participate consciously in this eternal dance of change and continuity, of ending and beginning, of death and life. The ark rocks gently, so gently, the motion almost imperceptible now, just the faintest suggestion of movement, like breathing, like the subtle rise and fall of the sleeping earth. And this motion is your lullaby. This gentleness is your cradle. This peace is your home. And you are safe here, completely safe, protected by waters that cleanse rather than destroy, lifted by forces that serve your highest good, guided by wisdom beyond your comprehension, but which you can trust completely, which has never failed you, which will never abandon you, which holds you now as a mother holds her sleeping child, with infinite tenderness, with perfect care. The stars above the ark are infinite in number, each one a sun, each one a source of light and life, each one surrounded by its own worlds where its own stories unfold, where its own cycles of renewal play out, and the light from these distant suns has been travelling for years, for centuries, for millennia, crossing the vast emptiness of space to arrive here now, to fall upon the ark and the waters and you, connecting you to the far reaches of the cosmos, reminding you that you are not separate, not isolated, not alone, but part of something incomprehensibly vast and beautiful, something that includes everything that exists, that has ever existed, that will ever exist, all woven together in a tapestry of light and consciousness, all dancing together in the great ceremony of being. And in this knowing, in this recognition of your place in the infinite web of existence, you can let go of all worry, all fear, all anxiety about tomorrow or next week or next year, because you understand now, in this deep place of sleep and dreams, that you are held, you are guided, you are part of the pattern, and the pattern is good. The pattern serves life. The pattern moves toward beauty and love and consciousness, always, in all times and all places, even when it seems otherwise. Even when the waters rise and the old world is washed away, there is purpose, there is meaning, there is the promise of renewal, the covenant of the rainbow, the assurance that life continues, that consciousness evolves, that love persists. Sleep deeply now, so deeply, sinking below the surface of ordinary awareness, descending into the profound depths where the waters are still and dark and full of mystery, where transformation happens without effort, where healing occurs naturally, where the self is remade and renewed without any action or striving required, only receptivity, only openness, only the willingness to let go and trust, to surrender and receive, to die to the old and be born to the new over and over, night after night, breath after breath, wave after wave, eternally refreshing, eternally renewing, eternally beginning again. The moonlight on the water is a blessing, the stars reflected in the waves are prayers, the gentle rocking of the ark is a meditation, the sleep that comes to you now is a sacrament, a holy act, a participation in the divine life, and as you sink deeper into this sleep you become one with the waters, one with the ark, one with the story, one with the eternal cycle of flood and renewal, of cleansing and rebirth, of destruction that is really creation, of endings that are really beginnings, of death that is really transformation into new life. And you understand now that you have never been separate from this. You have always been part of this. You will always be part of this. And this knowing brings such peace, such relief, such deep contentment. Rest now in this peace. Let it fill every cell of your body, every corner of your mind, every dimension of your soul. Let it wash through you like the gentle waters of renewal, carrying away all tension, all worry, all that weighs you down or holds you back, leaving you clean and clear and light, ready to float effortlessly through the night on the currents of sleep, ready to drift without resistance into dreams that will continue the work of renewal, that will speak to you in the language of symbol and image, that will show you things your waking mind cannot grasp, that will guide you toward healing and wholeness, toward integration and balance, toward the fullness of your being. The night is long and kind, stretching out before you with infinite patience, offering you all the time you need to rest, to restore, to renew. And there is no hurry, no rush, no pressure to wake, or to do, or to be anything other than what you are right now in this moment. A soul at rest, a consciousness releasing into sleep, a being surrendering to the natural rhythms of existence. And in this surrender there is joy, there is freedom, there is the profound rightness of being aligned with the way things are, with the flow of life, with the will of the divine that moves through all things, carrying them toward their ultimate fulfillment. The waters rock you, the ark cradles you, the darkness holds you, the silence embraces you, and you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to be doing, which is nothing at all except resting, sleeping, dreaming, renewing, and this is enough. This is perfect. This is complete, and you can let go now of any sense that you should be doing something else, thinking something else, being something else, because right here, right now, in this state of deep relaxation moving towards sleep, you are precisely what the universe needs you to be. You are fulfilling your purpose. You are participating perfectly in the great dance of existence. Sleep comes like a gentle fog, like mist rising from the waters, soft and subtle and irresistible, filling the space around you, filling your mind, filling your awareness until there is nothing left but the fog, the mist, the softness that is sleep, and you sink into it gratefully, releasing your last hold on waking consciousness, letting go of the final threads that connect you to the day that has passed, allowing yourself to drift completely into the blessed nothingness of deep sleep, into the void that is also fullness, into the darkness that is also light, into the death that is also life, into the ending that is also beginning. The ark floats on through the infinite night, carrying its precious cargo safely, and you are that cargo. You are precious beyond measure, valued beyond calculation, loved beyond understanding, and as the ark carries the animals and Ziusudra's family toward the new world, so your consciousness carries you through sleep toward the new day, toward the new you that will emerge when you wake, refreshed and renewed, cleansed by the waters of sleep, blessed by the rainbow of dreams, ready to step onto the shore of tomorrow and begin again with hope and joy and wonder. The story continues, but you do not need to follow it now. You do not need to know what happens next. You do not need to stay awake to witness the ending, because the ending is also a beginning, and it will be there when you wake. The new world will be waiting for you, green and fresh and full of possibility. But for now, you simply rest. You simply sleep. You simply allow the waters to hold you, the ark to protect you, the night to embrace you, and you trust that all is well, that all will be well, that all manner of things shall be well. Rest now, dear one, rest deeply and peacefully, float on the waters of renewal, dream the dreams of transformation, sleep the sleep of those who are loved and protected and guided by forces greater than themselves, but which care for them infinitely, which have orchestrated this entire story of flood and ark and rainbow, for their benefit, for their growth, for their evolution toward greater consciousness and greater love, and know that you are part of this story, that you have always been part of this story, that you will always be part of this story, and in this knowing find your peace, find your rest, find your deep and abiding joy. Sleep, 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 gentle and deep, rocked by waves of compassion, held by hands of light, blessed by the rainbow promise that arcs over your sleeping form, protecting you through the night, guiding you through dreams, delivering you safely to morning, renewed, refreshed, reborn, ready to begin again in the new world that awaits, the world that you will help create with your consciousness and your choices, with your love and your wisdom, with your unique gifts and your particular beauty. But all of that is for tomorrow. For now there is only this, only rest, only peace, only the gentle floating on infinite waters, only the deep sleep that heals and renews, only the blessed darkness that holds all light within it, only the silence that contains all sound, only the stillness that is the source of all movement. Good night, sleep well, dream beautifully, and wake renewed. But for now, for this long, peaceful now that stretches through the night, simply be, simply rest, simply float on the eternal waters that have carried life through every transformation, through every renewal, through every ending and beginning, from the first flood to this moment, from this moment to the last, from the last back to the first, in the great circle that has no end, the eternal return, the infinite cycle, the blessed spiral of death and rebirth that you are dancing, even now as you sleep, even now as you dream, even now as you sink deeper and deeper into the profound peace that passes all understanding, the peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away, the peace that is your birthright, your nature, your home. Rest in this peace, abide in this peace, become this peace, and know that you are loved, you are held, you are blessed beyond measure, now and forever, through all the days and nights of your life, through all the floods and renewals, through all the endings and beginnings, through all the transformations of body and soul, through time and beyond time, through space and beyond space, through form and into formlessness and back into form again, always held, always loved, always part of the great pattern, always home in the heart of the divine, always safe in the ark of consciousness, always floating on the waters of eternal renewal, always blessed by the rainbow of infinite promise. Sleep now, deeply and peacefully, and let these words fade into silence. Let the silence fade into sleep. Let the sleep fade into dreams. Let the dreams carry you where you need to go, show you what you need to see, teach you what you need to learn, heal what you need to heal, and trust that when you wake all will be well, all will be new, all will be blessed, for you're the flood and the ark and the rainbow. You are the old world and the new. You're the ending and the beginning. You are all of it, and it is all good, all beautiful, all part of the one great story of love and renewal that the universe is telling, that you are helping to tell, that we are all telling together, now and always, world without end, blessed be, good night, sleep well, sweet dreams, peace.